All Jungkook could remember before passing out was crying and being held roughly from behind. He opened his eyes and couldn't see anything. For a moment he thought he went blind. He assessed the situation he was in. His arms were behind his back, and his wrists were bound together. Firstly, he couldn't pull his ankles or knees apart either. He laid on a soft surface. A carpet, maybe. It strangely smelled familiar. He had most definitely been tied up and probably kidnapped. But what could he do? He thought to scream for help, if it weren't for the cover over his mouth. There was a moment where the panic set in. That his life could be in peril. Or maybe he would have to give up a large sum of money. Or maybe he would have to give up his tea. Or anything worse. He whimpered and sobbed into the floor. A worried expression written all over his face as a sorry way to comfort himself if it mattered to anyone anyway. And he heard a door open from one direction of the room, and it closing behind whoever opened it. Jungkook's cries quickly became more paced as he sensed the other person come closer to him. He felt a warm hand on his arm and jolted away. The hand continued to play with his body, and all he could whimper through the gag were muffled pleas as he tried to avoid the contact. The strong arms, likely those of a man, steadied him as a result of his failure to resist. He heard them speak. If you want things to end better for you, I suggest you behave in a proper manner. Then, Jungkook instantly recognized the voice. For a moment, he almost felt relieved because he thought he'd been saved, but it hit him that he should be untied by now. He writhed on the floor and began to scream through the gag, profusely nodding in disbelief. It couldn't be. He wouldn't. No, not him. Right, there was no way. Please, God, if there's one, get him out of here. Let this just be some sort of sick prank. He felt the hand on his face. Just be good. It's not that hard, Jungkook. I don't want to hurt you. Don't make me do something that I don't want to. Jungkook calculated that he might be more likely to get untied and a chance to escape if he stopped struggling. Arguing in his head, he hadn't got confirmation the voice belonged to who he thought it did yet. So he slightly relaxed as best as he could to please his captor. There's a good boy. Wasn't that hard, was it? Jungkook was being gently lifted to sit up and the cloth tied over his eyes became loose. Is that better? He said. It was undoubtedly him. Jungkook looked at the man holding the cloth used to remove his vision. Instead, he didn't immediately piss himself in fear. He still refused to believe the situation he was in. Instead, he could only cry and cry until his eyes were worn out. His friend, Taehyung, was knelt in front of him with a smug satisfied grin plastered ear to ear. All Jungkook read was the enjoyment he got out of him being in this position. How could you expect him to believe it at first? His friends wanting to see him tied up and helpless. That whole concept just didn't make any sense. Or did Taehyung just conceal the behavior of his inner demon so inconspicuously well? Even then, there was not even a hint of evidence to suggest Taehyung could ever do this to him. To anyone. Taehyung wouldn't hurt a soul. He was a good person. Jungkook suddenly felt he couldn't agree with himself anymore. The truth is, Taehyung wasn't all that charitable. Did Jungkook just ignore the signs or something? Whatever, it didn't matter now. His friend had betrayed him. And was going to hurt him, surely. The stranger cupped Jungkook's face and brushed his thumb over his cheek. It's so good you're all mine now. No one will ever go near you or speak to you or look at you ever again now. You're safe with me, Jungkook. And you'll never escape. Jungkook's teary eyes stared wide as he watched his face come closer to his to lay on his face. Oh, don't look at me like that. Are you red from the crying? The boy winced and sniffled. Taehyung took a moment to look at him. Never did his smile break. I want your soft lips and hear you cry as much as you want to. Jungkook went silent. hearing his sick desires out loud, not wanting to give him the satisfaction of reacting. Taehyung was untying the cloth in his mouth. Jungkook took his kindness and formed a sliver of hope that Taehyung would hurt him no further and maybe they could talk it out. Taehyung, I wanna go home, he finally spoke out in a meek tone. The younger couldn't help but very slightly flinch when he watched Taehyung's smile twitch into a frown. That's not happening, Jungkook. Why would you even suggest such a silly thing? Then suddenly he was laughing and joking again. Oh, you are very funny. Hey, the floor is uncomfortable. Come on my bed. Jungkook suffered the sensation of his friend carrying his tied-up body. Much better, wouldn't you say, Taehyung? When are you gonna untie me? The adult paused. Well, I can't be too sure you won't try to escape yet. Tae, it hurts. Jungkook pushed for more tears in a whiny voice. Taehyung sat up straight. No, Jungkook, it won't hurt for long, I promise. He suddenly looked intensely concerned for him and guilty that it made even Jungkook almost feel bad for him. It hurts, Taehyung, he cried, immoving. He felt a tough hand clutch his shoulder. Okay. I'll get you out of it. The adult turned to leave the room to find something to untie the rope fast, likely a knife or something. As soon as he was out of the room, Jungkook began screaming at the top of his lungs now that he was free to speak again. Help someone, anyone out there, please, help. Taehyung ran back in and pounced on the bed, pushing Jungkook backwards against the mattress and messing the blanket, his hand over Jungkook's mouth to cut him off. Jungkook shut his moist eyes tightly, shivering under the weight of the grown adult pressing on him, knowing what was coming. Taehyung's hand secured his whole jaw shut and assured Jungkook couldn't turn his head side to side, how firmly he was against the mattress. The adult tossed the kitchen knife to the other half of the bed so he could cut the teen's face once more. Jungkook, please, understand that you're going to love it here. Don't make it difficult for both of us. Someone hears you, the police come knocking, and what happens to me? If I get in trouble, I'll be forced to hurt you really bad. You wouldn't want that, would you? Jungkook had never heard his friend sound genuinely scared before. His voice sounded really angry and that anger was directed towards him. Jungkook felt himself cry harder listening to his threats. You hear me? You don't want to look at me. Taehyung grabbed his neck. Do you want me to hurt you really bad? Jungkook whined in fast short bursts like anything he did amounted to anything. I love you so much, Jungkook, but what you did wasn't funny. He removed his hand and it joined the other around his neck. It can't go unpunished, baby. Suddenly his captor was frivolously his mouth with an aching itch of weakness. Taehyung desperately the blonde under him and making some disgusting and unfamiliar squelching noises that made Jungkook feel sick and his tummy hurt. Jungkook cried and moaned against Taehyung's mouth in an effort to protest, but the adult continued to shove his loathsome love down his throat. This was by far the moment Jungkook felt genuinely scared. He felt alone and like no one could help anymore. Everything was uncomfortable. He was confined against his will and he genuinely couldn't move. And his body was being used without his power to stop it. He felt like he couldn't breathe. Even more so as Taehyung's hunger exacerbating created the tightness around his neck to increase. All mine, Jungkook. He let the tears flow even more, resorting to the only way he knew how to cope since he was a baby. Why would Taehyung, who he thought was his best friend, do this to him? What sick monster hurts their own friends? But that was only the tip of the iceberg of thoughts racing through Jungkook's head. Why was Taehyung him? Why did Taehyung say he loved him? What did it all mean? All so suddenly? Taehyung pulled away to look at his little crying red mess. Jungkook saw only love in his eyes. A short burst of comfort and safety struck his heart, but maybe he was just distracted, lost in thought. No loving man would treat their lover this way. The teen refused to believe it. So pretty. I wanna you all day today. Taehyung leaned right back in, this time removing a hand and placing it over his nape, so he could have room to molest the nook of his neck with more of his mouth, the other hand still in increasingly firm grip. Admittedly, he was very sensual and almost gentle with the way he his skin. Most of all, Jungkook couldn't handle the noises. They were so wet and lewd and they were happening to him. He was shaking and shivering and whimpering and stressed with what to do with his body. Suddenly, a very suggestive sound escaped him. Taehyung, he arched his spine. To which the older chuckled and groaned low against him. Taehyung, he continued to whine. What? Taehyung responded playfully on his skin. Can't do this. Yeah, you can, he moaned in defeat. Jungkook, stop, the older said, shakily. What your stupid noises? Taehyung was clearly fed up, but it was too late. He turned Jungkook's body over. No, Jungkook breathed. Yes. Now you're gonna be my good little princess and you're not gonna ruin this for me. I mean, how could you? You're so perfect, all tied up and powerless to me like this. Taehyung laughed. Jungkook screeched into the mattress at Taehyung's confession. Engulfed in his scent, he feared it would be the only thing he smelled for a while. I wanna see her body so bad, he sighed, as he eagerly forced Jungkook's shirt away, using the blade to rip into it when he got frustrated. Taehyung grabbed Jungkook's neck and lifted him up to his knees. He held him tightly from behind. Jungkook, I'm the first and I can't. Dissatisfied with the blonde's response, Jungkook jolted upwards and away with a distraught yelp. No, Taehyung regained his clutch on his neck from the front, to which the child tried to resist again. Stop it! Taehyung pressed the knife against Jungkook's neck when he refused to listen. He was obedient then. I'll be the only one who gets to see you like this. Do you understand? Please, please, I don't know what I did to deserve this. I'm sorry, Jungkook spoke between sobs. At that moment they could both hear his heart beating out of his chest. Jungkook, if you keep acting like this, Taehyung began. No, he gave up. Jungkook felt the fever and heard a zip and Taehyung shuffling. Taehyung, please, please, he let out a loud scream shortly after. Taehyung let go of the knife so he could hold Jungkook tightly. Taehyung gave himself the pleasure to begin himself. Oh yeah, baby, Jungkook ejaculated onto Taehyung's bed at the sound of the older's voice alone. My little doll, he whimpered slightly against Jungkook's neck. He didn't last long, but he could go for more, but maybe he felt he had pushed Jungkook too far. That wasn't so bad, was it? Did you like it? Didn't that feel right? To have with your isn't that right? Jungkook. Taehyung would pull out and see him leaking, but he just wanted to be close to Jungkook. Why are you still crying, my sweetheart? You know how much that hurts me. Taehyung aggressively shoved Jungkook forwards. The blonde closed his eyes as he lay just where he was. Stupid. You know I could kill you if I wanted to, I just choose not to. You sound so immature. He blinked. This is why you could never survive out there on your own. You're only safe with me. He lied beside him and held tight. I'll untie you now. I'm sorry if that hurt you, he spoke, knowing full well it did. Taehyung took his blade and freed Jungkook of the ropes. Thank you, Jungkook spoke and even went as far as to burying his face into Taehyung's chest. Don't bother, he said as though he were completely sane. Well, it wouldn't have sounded that way until he started kissing Jungkook again. For a time, the teen felt very adored, but he couldn't forget the knife Taehyung held behind him as they cuddled. Are you going to sleep? Jungkook said. It's fine, Angel, I just wanna watch. He kissed again. Taehyung heard the teen squeak under him. Yes, he smiled lovingly. Are you going to kill me? He whispered. This stumped Taehyung for a moment, but he couldn't help but kiss him again. He was too cutesy not to. Only if you run away, he said between kisses. Jungkook cried and spoke up when he saw an opening. Okay,